Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a time when your idea of a career movement swapping your rickety village life for a musket, marching orders, and the gentle aroma of 1,000 unwashed men. You're about to join Napoleon's Grand Army. Yes, that Napoleon. The short guy with the huge hat and even bigger dreams. Now, fair warning, you probably wouldn't survive this. Between the blisters, lice, and the possibility of being used as cannon fodder, this isn't exactly a spa vacation. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The itch begins before the uniform. That peculiar, crawling itch of restlessness, of being stuck in a tiny hamlet somewhere in France, where your daily choices are farming, or marrying your cousin and farming together. There's a poster on the wall outside the tavern, curling at the corners, promising glory, honor, and pay. You can't read half of it, but it has Napoleon's name in large letters and something about defeating enemies of the Republic. You've had 2 cups of cheap wine. Your friend Jacques is yelling that he could beat any Austrian barehanded, and before you know it, you're holding a goose feather and signing your name, or at least trying to. The room smells like smoke, sour cheese, and old leather. There's a man with a braided mustache and a waxy grin sitting behind a rickety desk. His uniform looks fancy until you see the patches holding the sleeves together. He gives you a slip of paper that confirms, more or less, that you're property of the state now. Your first payment is a handshake and a promise. No coin yet, but apparently it's coming. Maybe, probably, possibly. Your hair is too long, your boots aren't regulation, and you're asked politely, but firmly, to strip. A fellow recruit next to you has a birthmark in the shape of a goose on his thigh, and this becomes the most memorable thing you'll see for the next 4 days. Your clothes are thrown into a pile that might be burned, or maybe just passed to the next sorry soul behind you. In return, you're given what can only be described as a uniform-shaped suggestion: a woolen coat that smells like attic, pants that are 2 sizes off in opposite directions, and a pair of shoes that squeak like they're scared. Your cap doesn't fit. It sits too high, like a pastry on your head, and a boy next to you says you look like a circus monkey. You'll be friends in 3 days, enemies in a week, and probably carrying each other's weight on the road before the month is over. The barracks, if you can call it that, resemble an abandoned barn with less personality. Rows of straw mattresses stuffed into frames made by someone who clearly hated beds. The walls breathe dampness. At night, the wind whistles through gaps in the wood, and you wonder if it's safer outside. The first night, someone snores so loudly it startles a rat, which then runs across your chest and out the door like it's late for roll call. You wake to the sound of a bell, or maybe a bucket falling, and you're immediately yelled at by someone with a voice that sounds like gravel being stirred with a spoon. Drill sergeant, probably. His mustache is sharper than your bayonet, and he's already angry you exist. Breakfast is a ladle of something wet and beige. You ask if it's soup. No one answers. You eat it anyway. Hunger has a way of lowering your standards. Outside, the morning air cuts through your new coat like it's made of lace. You stand in formation next to 50 other versions of yourself, some taller, some scruffier, one who already smells like brandy. You all wobble like a row of scarecrows in the breeze. The sergeant gives a speech. It's hard to remember all of it, but the words discipline, loyalty, and stop scratching are repeated often. He tells you that as soldiers of France, you are the iron spine of the empire. You feel more like cartilage, but nod anyway. Then come the drills, marching in lines, turning in sync, lifting your musket until your arms tremble. You've never held a gun before. The first time you fire, it kicks back so hard it nearly knocks your hat off. Again. The boy next to you falls over entirely, and the sergeant makes a joke about dominoes. Everyone laughs, mostly out of fear. Fact: Napoleon's conscription system, known as the levy en masse, pulled in men from all over the country. If you were between 20 and 25, had 2 working legs, and didn't own a printing press, congratulations, you were eligible. Lesser known fact: some rural recruits had never even seen a city before, let alone war. One soldier famously mistook a cannon for a carriage and asked where the horses went. At night, you try writing a letter home. The candle sputters and your hands cramp. You tell your mother you're doing fine, that the food's decent and the uniform fits well. Lies are easier to write than truth. Besides, she'll probably be proud just knowing you're serving under Napoleon, even if the closest you've come to him is a woodcut portrait in the captain's tent. You started calling your boots left and also left because they feel interchangeable and equally wrong. Your feet itch, your scalp itches, and your nerves itch from the sound of coughing that doesn't stop after lights out. You whisper to yourself that this will get better. Probably. Maybe. Possibly. There's a rumor that Napoleon visits his troops in disguise. Someone claims he was here last week, dressed as a cook, tasting soup and inspecting latrines. Another insists he rode past on a white horse, tossing apples to the recruits like a French Caesar. Historians still wonder how much contact Napoleon truly had with his common soldiers, if he really walked among them, or if those were just bedtime stories for the trenches. In a corner of the room, someone's snoring again. It's become oddly comforting. You breathe out slowly, eyes heavy, brain full. The mattress feels a little less like hay tonight, and the ceiling doesn't look as cold. You fall asleep wondering what battle smells like. Probably like this place, but louder. You wake up to a trumpet blast that feels like it's been shoved directly into your skull. The wooden walls around you are still damp with morning dew, or possibly the breath of 50 men sleeping too close together. Either way, your blanket is wet, your socks are wetter, and your optimism is gone entirely. You sit up, bones clicking like poorly assembled furniture, and try not to groan too loudly. Groaning only invites attention, and attention invites orders. Your boots stare at you from the edge of the bed. You hesitate. The left one, also left, has a new split near the toe just wide enough to let it rocks, but too small to qualify for a replacement. You slide your feet in, slowly, carefully, like you're negotiating a treaty with 2 angry weasels. The leather bites back, stiff and swollen from yesterday's rain, and your heels protest with the angry sting of skin rubbed raw. The boots feel tighter than ever, although that might be the bandages you wrapped around your new blisters. It's a shame no one mentioned that 90% of soldiering is foot pain. Outside, the sky is a thick gray blanket. You stand in a field of other hunched shapes, all muttering under their breath or coughing with what sounds like mild resentment toward being alive. The sergeant appears again, this time with a slightly larger stick. You don't know what he uses it for, and you don't want to find out. He orders the line to straighten, though you suspect no one here has had a straight spine since birth. And then you march, not to war, not to glory, not to anywhere particularly important. You just march around the field in squares and circles. Forward turn, shoulder arms, halt about face. Over and over. You try to focus, but your boots are doing their best to distract you by inventing new shapes of pain. Your feet are a strange stew of sweat, grit, and regret. And with each step, it feels like the blisters are negotiating new real estate deals across your toes. The captain shouts something inspirational from the side. Something about precision being the foundation of victory. But you're too busy mentally separating your left foot from your leg to fully absorb the message. Precision feels like a joke when you're being led by a guy whose biggest achievement this morning was buttoning his coat with matching buttons. You break for lunch around noon, if you can call it lunch. A piece of bread that's more air than substance, a chunk of something grayish, and a cup of sour wine that tastes like someone whispered grapes in a vinegar. You eat because it's food, not because you're enjoying it. The bread rips a bit more skin from the roof of your mouth, and the gray chunk turns out to be meat or something adjacent. You chew and try not to ask questions. After lunch, drills resume, this time with the added bonus of musket practice. You load, aim, fire, reload, aim, and fire again. Except your musket jams once, twice, and by the third time, you're just shaking it like an angry baker shaking an empty flour sack. The sergeant notices. Of course he does. You get a personal lesson in weapon maintenance, which involve a lot of yelling and you nodding like a guilty schoolboy. You're told that your life may one day depend on this jammed stick of iron and powder. You believe it. You also believe your life may end because of your own bootlaces at this point. Between drills, you wait, and then you wait some more. Waiting, it turns out, is the other 90% of soldiering. You sit on your pack and watch as someone next to you slowly picks lint from his jacket like he's performing surgery. Someone else plays a mouth harp badly, and a third stares into space with the calm emptiness of a cow chewing cud. You ask what's next, and the answer is always the same: more marching. Fact: a French line infantryman in Napoleon's army could expect to march up to 20 miles a day during campaign season. That's roughly 50,000 steps, each one taken in boots that were often too tight, too thin, or too non-existent by week's end. Lesser-known detail: some soldiers, desperate for comfort, would soak their boots in vinegar and then let them dry on their feet, hoping to mold them better. This either softened the leather or turned their feet into pickled wreckage. It was a gamble. You watch as one of your fellow recruits collapses on his bunk mid-afternoon and falls asleep instantly. No one bothers him. Sleep, like decent footwear, is a limited resource. You try to rest your eyes, but your legs twitch with leftover energy from drills, and your backside is developing a lifelong grudge against wooden benches. The barracks smell worse today. Someone spilled soup, or maybe threw up soup, and the scent has mingled with the musk of damp wool, old feet, and frustration. You complain, but your nose gave up hours ago. You inhale, and it's just background now. The officers pass by occasionally. Always cleaner, always shinier. They seem to glide instead of walk, and none of them ever look tired. One of them even has boots with polished toes. Miraculous. You wonder if he even walks at all, or if he's wheeled around like fine china. He nods at you. You nod back. The exchange feels both royal and ridiculous. You begin to notice something. Everyone's legs move the same way now, like puppets pulled by the same lazy hand. There's a rhythm to it, a shared beat. You don't even think about it anymore. You turn when the others turn, stop when they stop, like birds in a flock. It's mechanical, and there's comfort in that. You stop worrying about what's next and just lean into the rhythm. There's a debate in the bunkhouse that night. What's worse, the marching or the waiting? Someone argues for the marching. You at least feel like something's happening. Another swears the waiting's better because it hurts less. You stay silent. The real answer is the boots. The boots are the enemy. Historians still wonder how the Grand Army managed such enormous, coordinated movement with such minimal communication tools. No radios, no GPS, just drummers, messengers, and the occasional terrified scout on horseback. How did thousands of weary, half-starved men keep it together long enough to become one of the most feared forces in Europe? Some say it was Napoleon's charisma. Others say it was discipline. You're starting to think it was just that no one wanted to be yelled at again. As night falls, you take off your boots with the slow precision of a man dismantling a time bomb. You wince as the cool air hits the raw skin beneath your socks. The blisters have names now. You call the big one Sergeant, and the smaller one also Sergeant. You wrap your feet in what little cloth you have left and whisper promises that you'll be kinder to them tomorrow. Lies again, but soothing ones. You lie back and listen. Somewhere, someone's coughing. Another is muttering in his sleep. Your muscles ache like they've been scooped out and replaced with warm stones. But it's a good kind of tired, dumb, and deep. You let it wash over you like a wave, pulling you under into a sea of warm nothing. You think briefly of home, of bread that wasn't stale, of walking barefoot without consequences, of soft grass and not having to carry 60 pounds of musket, pack, and regret. Then again, you also think of the farm, of plowing fields all day and sleeping with goats. Maybe blisters and boredom aren't so bad after all. The wind outside whistles through the wooden slats, and you imagine it singing to you. A lullaby in a minor key. You breathe in, you breathe out. Your boots rest beside your bed, ominous and quiet, like they're dreaming of more marching. You close your eyes. The night stretches long and silent. For now, there are no orders. No yelling. Just the quiet hum of exhausted bodies, the softness of your straw-stuffed pillow, and the heavy, beautiful relief of stillness. Morning doesn't wake you. It chases you out of sleep like a dog barking at the back of your brain. The trumpet call today feels more aggressive, if that's possible. Your eyes creak open to the pale gray of dawn leaking in through the cracks in the barracks. Your feet ache before you even touch the ground, like they somehow dreamed of marching too. You roll upright and stare at your boots again, the old enemies. They're dry now, stiff as stone tablets and twice as unforgiving. You slip them on and your heels scream, your toes curl, and for a moment you consider deserting just to spend one morning barefoot in a field of grass. But desertion comes with hanging. Grass doesn't, so the boots win. You're handed a biscuit and some hot black liquid that may or may not be coffee. It smells burnt and slightly metallic, but it's warm, and that's enough. You drink it fast, ignoring the bitter aftertaste that makes you suspect it was boiled in a rusty pot. The biscuit crumbles like sand in your mouth. Someone tries to tell a joke about the bread being made from leftover cannon powder, but no one laughs. Not because it's not funny, but because everyone's too busy chewing and pretending it's food. Then comes the word, march. It's not a suggestion. It's not a plan. It's a sentence. You hear it, and something in your soul sighs. You grab your pack, your musket, your rations, and what's left of your spirit, and you line up with the others. The line stretches down the road, a crooked centipede of men in mismatched uniforms, hunched under the weight of everything they now own. The first steps are the hardest, not because they hurt, though they do, but because they signal the start of something without a clear end. The officer at the front waves his sword like he's conducting a sad orchestra, and the whole column lurches into motion. Left, right? Left, right? The sound of boots on packed dirt becomes a kind of heartbeat. Steady, relentless, maddening. Within 20 minutes, someone is limping. Within an hour, two men are already rewrapping their bandages while still walking. The road stretches ahead in a brown ribbon. Trees blur by. Villages blink into view, then disappear behind you without so much as a hello. No one cheers. No one waves. You're just part of the endless stream now. The only entertainment is whatever your brain can cook up while your legs keep doing their miserable dance. You hum the same 4 bars of a marching song over and over until it starts to sound like a funeral dirge. Then you switch to counting horses, then trees, then your own steps. You lose track somewhere around 3,000. Fact, Napoleon's armies were notorious for their long, grueling marches. Some campaigns saw soldiers traveling over 30 miles a day, especially during desperate maneuvers. To make things worse, there were often no proper roads, just mud, rocks, and hope. Lesser known detail, some soldiers tied frogs to their belts as good luck charms. Others painted crude faces on their canteens to feel less alone. Superstition on the march was as common as foot fungus. Both were impossible to cure. Around midday, you pass a horse that has decided to do its business directly in front of your path. The steaming pile splatters with a soggy drama, that makes you reconsider everything about cavalry. The soldier in front of you doesn't dodge fast enough. He slips, stumbles, and swears in 6 creative variations of the same word. You help him up, partly because you're a good person and partly because stepping around him would have required effort. The sun climbs overhead. It's hotter now. Your coat sticks to your back, the sweat trickling down like melting wax. Your shoulders ache from your pack. Your rifle, slung across your chest, has somehow grown heavier every hour. You consider naming it just to pass the time. Something friendly, like Louise, or Death Stick. The road is starting to shimmer in the heat. Your lips dry out, and the water in your canteen tastes like boiled pennies. You ration sips. You think about streams, fountains, even puddles. A bird chirps somewhere in the distance, and you imagine wringing it out like a sponge. Eventually, the column slows for a break. You collapse like a puppet with its strings cut. The grass beneath you feels like heaven, even if it smells like manure. You peel off your boots and examine the damage. Your feet are swollen, red, and suspiciously soft in places that should never be soft. One toenail has turned a gentle shade of blue. That can't be good. You eat part of your ration, a slab of cheese the consistency of gravel, and some dried meat that might be squirrel. You don't ask. You just chew. There's no joy in it, just calories. Nearby, 2 men are arguing about where exactly you're marching. One swears it's east toward Austria. The other says south toward Italy. You realize neither of them really knows. No one tells you anything. You just go where the boots point. Historians still debate whether Napoleon intentionally kept his lower ranks in the dark or simply didn't see the point in informing them. After all, if they knew what was coming, who would march? You close your eyes for 10 minutes and dream of shoes made of clouds. Then it's time to get up again. The second half of the day is worse. Your body's already sore, your energy's low, and your brain is melting in the sun. The rhythm of walking becomes a kind of trance. You forget who you are for long stretches, just a pair of legs carrying a sack of meat forward. Your mind slips into strange places, half memories, nonsense rhymes, distant thoughts of home, women you've never met, bread you'll never eat again. You see a tree shaped like your grandmother and laugh out loud. No one notices. Marching next to you is a man with a limp and a haunted look. He mutters names under his breath. Maybe family, maybe ghosts. Another man behind you starts singing, off-key and loud, until someone throws a stick at him. He doesn't stop. It's somehow comforting. There are brief moments of beauty if you squint hard enough. A flock of birds overhead. A patch of wildflowers growing on a hillside. A breeze that kisses your face for just 2 seconds before disappearing like a cruel tease. And it's back to the road. Always the road. The officer on horseback barks something about formation, and the line jerks into a tighter column. You shuffle faster. You curse softly. The dust from the horses coats your tongue. You are officially a walking disaster. You finally arrive at, well, nowhere in particular. A field with some tents. A ditch. A fire pit that smokes lazily. It's not a village. It's not a camp. It's just a place to stop. You're told you'll sleep here tonight. You don't argue. You drop your pack. You sit. You remove your boots with a hiss and a quiet prayer. Your feet pulse like living things. You massage them gently, like they might forgive you. They won't. The stars come out slowly, dotting the sky with a quiet dignity you haven't felt all day. Someone starts humming a lullaby. Another person farts audibly. Somehow, both sounds are equally soothing. You stare up at the sky and wonder how many more days of this lie ahead. 10, 20, 100? No one knows. The road just keeps going. Napoleon's map may have an X on it, but for now, you're just a speck on the line that leads to it. And yet, part of you finds comfort in the repetition. Left, right, right? The rhythm of the march, the burn in your legs, the dust in your throat. It all blends into something almost meditative. You stop thinking in words. You exist only in movement, in exhaustion, in the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. Tomorrow you'll march again, probably to another nowhere, possibly to battle, maybe just in a big, stupid circle. But tonight, for just a few hours, you're not marching. You're lying on the ground, under the stars, listening to the chorus of 100 men snoring in harmony. You close your eyes. Your boots lie beside you, ominous and sleeping, like monsters who will wake with the dawn. But for now, there's silence, and stars, and the faint memory of birds. Your stomach growls so loudly that the man next to you glances over, startled, like you've just confessed to eating his boot. It's been gnawing at itself for hours now, folding in on emptiness and whispering terrible ideas, like chewing leather straps or licking your musket barrel just for the salt. And you know it's going to get worse before it gets even slightly better. Welcome to another gourmet day in Napoleon's Grand Army, where the cuisine is as mysterious as the marching orders and possibly more dangerous than enemy fire. You sit cross-legged beside a lukewarm campfire, staring into a dented tin bowl filled with something you've decided to call stew only because gray liquid with floaty chunks sounds less appetizing. It smells vaguely of meat, more sharply of turnips, and has the consistency of regret. You poke at it with your spoon. One of the chunks shifts and lets out a suspicious bubble. You squint at it. It stares back. You eat anyway. Your spoon makes a dull clink against the bottom of the bowl far too quickly. That was the whole serving. 6 bites. You consider licking the sides, then notice someone across the fire doing just that, like a cat with a can of fish. He's making eye contact while doing it. You look away. What you wouldn't give for a fresh loaf of bread, or even a slightly old one. The standard Army issue biscuit, also called hardtack, is not technically food. It's more like a weapon in cracker form. You've seen one crack a man's tooth. Twice. You carry yours like it might one day be used as a shield. To eat it, you soak it in whatever liquid you can find. Wine, stew, tears, until it's soft enough to gnaw without injuring yourself. Sometimes you just give up and suck on it until it dissolves like a sad, salty lozenge. Then there's your onion. Ah, the onion. You found it 2 weeks ago in a market town during a brief supply stop. It was round, firm, and slightly sweet-smelling, practically divine by campaign standards. You named it Maurice. You kept Maurice wrapped in a bit of cloth at the bottom of your pack, taking it out only to admire its smooth skin and dream of the day you'd slice it delicately into a meal. That day arrived yesterday. You stared at Maurice for a long time, tried to resist, but your belly overruled sentiment. You cried when you peeled it, not because of the sting, but because you knew it was the last friend you'd have until you reached the next village. You sautéed him in grease salvaged from some questionable bacon, added him to the stew, and for one glorious moment, dinner tasted like something your grandmother might have made if she'd been drunk, blindfolded, and trying to poison someone. Fact. The Grand Army's official rations included bread, meat, usually salted or smoked, beans, rice, and brandy. Though how much of that you actually got depended heavily on where you were, how badly supply lines were failing, and how many officers had already taken their cut. Lesser-known detail. Soldiers were often so desperate for seasoning that they'd trade buttons, bullets, or even boots for a pinch of salt. One diary recounts a man selling half his rations just for a spoonful of mustard. A bold move, but mustard makes everything better, even despair. You try to barter with a man from another company who claims he has a carrot. A real one. Fresh. Unbitten. He offers to trade it for your tobacco pouch, which only has crumbs left. You stare at him. He stares at you. In the end, you both walk away disappointed. Evenings are when the smell of cooking, or more accurately, the smell of burning, drifts through the camp like a cruel reminder that you're all making it up as you go. Soldiers crouch over little fires, tossing in whatever they've scrounged. Roots, moldy bread, questionable cuts of meat from animals whose original shape is no longer discernible. You once saw someone drop an entire rat into a pot, then claim it was just a small rabbit. No one argued. No one wanted to. And yet, despite it all, you eat it. You always eat it. Because hunger has no pride, and your stomach is an optimist. It believed that maybe this time the stew won't taste like feet. Breakfast, when there is one, is usually a chunk of dry bread or the leftover stew reheated to new levels of horror. If you're lucky, someone brewed coffee. If you're very lucky, it's not made from burned barley. The best you can hope for is warmth and the illusion of nourishment. You once had a dream that you found an apple under your blanket. You woke up chewing your own sleeve. Sometimes the officers eat better. Sometimes you see them now and then with actual forks, real plates, food that still has identifiable texture. One officer received a whole roast duck last week, sent from his family. He ate it in front of you all like a man, unaware he was in danger. You heard someone behind you whisper, "One more bite, and I'll eat his horse." You believe them. There are games soldiers play to distract from the hunger. Imaginary meals, mostly. Someone describes the best food they ever ate, and everyone closes their eyes and imagines it in detail. Roasted chicken, dripping with juices. Bread fresh from the oven, crust crisp, steam rising from the middle. Cheese that melts on the tongue instead of cracking like chalk. It works for a while, until someone's stomach growls so violently it breaks the spell. You learn tricks. How to scrape the bottom of your tin with your spoon, just right to make it sound like you're still eating. How to chew slowly enough that a bite lasts twice as long. How to hold your nose and swallow without tasting anything. Some men save one hardtack biscuit for emergencies, true emergencies. You've heard rumors of men boiling their boots for soup. You tell yourself those are just jokes. But you've looked at your boots lately and wondered. Historians still debate the extent to which hunger affected discipline in Napoleon's armies. Did hunger drive men to mutiny? Did it fuel desperation in battle? Or was it just part of the price of war? Something everyone expected and endured? The truth is buried in the mud, next to the crumbs of 1,000 lost meals. One night, a miracle happens. A supply wagon arrives. Real supplies. Cheese, bread, dried fruit, even sausages. You blink in disbelief as the crates are unloaded. You get in line, stomach twitching in anticipation. When your turn comes, you're handed a piece of smoked meat the size of your fist and a small wheel of hard cheese. You eat slowly, reverently. The meat is salty, tender, and tastes like salvation. The cheese crumbles with a sharp tang that makes your jaw ache, but it's glorious. You chew with your eyes closed, and for one beautiful hour, the world feels right. You save a bite for later. A single piece of sausage, carefully wrapped and hidden in your sock. You dream of eating it tomorrow, maybe with a little bread, maybe while sitting in the sun. But when you wake, it's gone. You suspect the man sleeping next to you. He doesn't look guilty, but no one ever does. You don't say anything. You just mourn quietly and make a new rule: never hide food in your socks. Still, the memory of that meal keeps you going. Days later, when the stew is thin again and the biscuits are cracking your molars, you remember that bite of cheese, that one perfect piece of meat. And you believe, just barely, that another miracle might come. For now, you swirl the gray stew and pretend it's soup from a Parisian cafe. You chew hardtack and pretend it's cake. You sip boiled water and pretend it's wine. The imagination is a powerful spice. Your belly still growls. Always will. But it's quieter now, as if it knows this is just how things are. You lie back after dinner, staring at the stars. You feel the dull ache of hunger mingling with the tiredness in your bones. You close your eyes, dream of onions and sausages and things with flavor. You hear someone snoring, another mumbling in their sleep. And you smile, slightly, because even in a world of stale bread and mystery meat, you found a moment of joy. Maurice would be proud. You finally made it through another day of marching, drilling, eating your emotional support onion, and dodging whatever bodily fluids are being flung around camp. And now at last, it's time to do what every exhausted soldier dreams of: sleep. Except in Napoleon's army, sleep is not so much restful as it is a form of quiet suffering. And it starts with the matter of your so-called tent. Theoretically, you're entitled to one. Realistically, tents are communal, worn, often missing bits, and smell like someone used them as a latrine during the last campaign. Because someone probably did. You and 5 other equally weary souls huddle inside a piece of coarse canvas that seems better at inviting cold and then keeping it out. If you're lucky, the tent is upright. If not, you're sleeping under what amounts to a heavy, dirty blanket with sticks in your face. You curl yourself around your gear, try not to stab yourself with your own bayonet, which is always inconveniently placed no matter where you put it. There's barely enough room to lie flat. Someone's boots are in your ribs, another guy's breath is a warm fog against your neck, and just as you start to drift off, a wet cough erupts 2 inches from your ear. Delightful. The ground is hard, lumpy, and perpetually damp. It hasn't rained today, but it doesn't matter. The soil in France, or Italy, or Poland, or wherever Napoleon's whim has dragged you, always finds a way to retain the worst qualities of a swamp. You shift, trying to find the least pointy rock, but your blanket is thin, your coat is thinner, and your patience is non-existent. You consider sleep a battlefield in itself. You must fight for it. You will lose men to it, and sometimes it feels like a distant victory only heard about in campfire legends. Speaking of campfires, there's one smoldering nearby, but the smoke always seems to find your tent no matter where you are. It curls in through the flap, mixes with the overwhelming stink of sweat, wet wool, mildew, onions, and feet. There are layers to the stench, an olfactory lasagna of misery. And you've gotten so used to it that when you don't smell it, you actually feel a little uneasy. The scent of anything clean would probably spook you at this point. Fleas are your nightly companions. They don't even bother to hide anymore. By now, you're a walking, scratching buffet. You've named a few of them. Philippe, for example, lives behind your left knee and has a taste for drama. Each night, he seems to rally his comrades like he's Napoleon himself, leading strategic assaults on the most sensitive and unreachable bits of your anatomy. There's no escape. Your uniform is infested. Your blanket is infested. The tent is infested. And worst of all, when someone finally loses it and tries to fumigate the area with smoke or booze or something more experimental, it only makes the fleas angry. There's always a guy who snores like he's chewing gravel in his sleep. He might be 2 tents over, and you can still hear him. You wonder if you should just smother him with your canteen and blame the Prussians. But then you remember, he might be your only source of body heat when the frost sets in. Strategic alliances must be preserved, even with enemies like Claude the Chainsaw Lungs. You lie back, staring up at the inside of the tent, tracing the patterns in the stained fabric above you. One spot looks like Corsica. Another looks like the face of that corporal who keeps yelling at everyone for sleeping with no honor. You once tried to count how many fleas crossed from one side of the tent to the other, but lost track at 73 when a fellow soldier let loose a fart so violent it startled the lot of you into a state of hyper-alertness. No one slept that night. We still don't talk about it. Occasionally, you get lucky and it's a dry night. The cold is sharp but manageable. The moonlight filters through the canvas, and you almost forget how miserable you are. Someone might hum a tune from back home, something quiet and nostalgic that makes your chest ache in a way you didn't expect. For a moment, you think of your village, your mother's bread, that girl you kissed in a hayloft. Then the wind picks up, someone rolls onto your shin, and you're back in reality. Let's talk about the cold. It sneaks up on you. First, your fingers go numb, then your toes. Eventually, your nose just gives up. You wrap your coat around your feet, pull your scarf over your face, and bury yourself like a turtle in the hopes that sleep will find you before hypothermia does. Sometimes it works. Other times, you lie there shaking, teeth chattering, wondering if perhaps you should have just stayed home and married the blacksmith's daughter. Historians still wonder if Napoleon truly grasped the suffering of his men when it came to sleeping conditions. Some say he did, having spent nights in tents himself. Others argue he was so focused on strategy and movement that the everyday discomforts of the average soldier simply didn't register. It's an open question that may never be answered, though your back, sore from rocks and regret, has already formed an opinion. You're not even guaranteed this nightly chaos. Sometimes you don't get a tent at all. If the unit's on the move and no supplies have arrived, congratulations, you're sleeping outside. Rain? Too bad. Snow? Even better. You curl up under a tree or slump against your pack. Try to find shelter from the elements while the wind mocks you like a bratty child with a flute. Once you saw a man dig a shallow trench and lay in it like a grave just to get out of the wind. He looked disturbingly comfortable. And if you think you'll get a full night's rest, think again. Bugles blare at ungodly hours. Sometimes it's a drill. Sometimes it's an attack. Sometimes someone's cow wandered off and the whole regiment gets roused to chase it down because meat is more precious than gold. You wake up groggy, stiff, cold, and 10% more bitter than you were the day before, wondering if this is what patriotism is supposed to feel like. The thing is, you adapt. Slowly, your standards shift. A flattish patch of ground becomes luxury. A night without frostbite is cause for celebration. You learn to sleep through shouting, snoring, coughing, and the occasional rat crawling over your leg. You find a rhythm in the misery. You wrap your blanket tighter, hum an off-key tune, and tell yourself that tomorrow might be better, even if you know it probably won't be. And when against all odds, you do get a few hours of real sleep, deep drooling, dream-filled sleep, it's like stepping into another life. You dream of warmth, softness, quiet, maybe even a real bed. You imagine yourself sinking into a feather mattress with no boots in your back, no fleas nibbling your ankles, no claws snoring like a dying moose. You smile in your sleep, just a little. Then someone kicks you awake because it's your turn on watch. You crouch beneath a crooked awning of stitched canvas, your knees tucked uncomfortably into your chest, and squint at a sheet of damp, wrinkled paper. The ink smudges if you breathe too hard. The quill is a sad feather you stole off a chicken 2 camps ago. And the ink? It's part soot, part water, part something else you'd rather not think too much about. But here you are, scratching out a letter home like you're some dignified court scribe and not a half-starved, dirt-smeared soldier in Napoleon's ever-marching, rarely sleeping army. The rain is doing its usual lazy dribble across the edge of your nose. It hasn't properly stormed in a few days, which would be good news, except it means you're due. The paper in your hand is already damp and curling like it's trying to escape the very idea of being touched. You're not sure if this letter will make it to your village, or your mother, or anyone, really. The last one was sent off with a courier who looked like he'd never delivered anything more complicated than a bottle of wine to himself. Still, you're right. You're right because it's the only thing that makes you feel tethered to the person you used to be back when your name was just a name and not followed by a number and a serial code. You try not to lie too much. You don't say you're fine, but you don't say you watched a man try to cook a boot last night either. Just somewhere in between. A spirited update, if you will. Your teammates are also writing or pretending to. Some are doodling horses. One guy, Henri maybe, is composing a sonnet about a woman named Claudette, and it's embarrassingly bad. You hope she never reads it. But still, he folds the page with a proud little flourish like he's just finished an epic saga. Not 4 lines that rhyme love with dove, and then, bafflingly, shove. Beyond the scattered whispering of pens on paper and the occasional sneeze from someone's developing trench cough. The real action is taking place in the informal network of gossip that oozes through the camp like warm gruel. The stories swirl around the fires and bedrolls with no discernible source and absolutely no verification. But let's be honest, that never stopped a good rumor. You hear from a man whose cousin knows a stable boy in Paris that Napoleon's gotten himself a new hat. Not a new strategy, not a new mistress. All hot. Apparently, it's taller. For intimidation, someone whispers, as though headwear can win battles. Another soldier insists it's lined with badger fur, which is ridiculous. Badgers are mean, and nobody in their right mind would wear one on their head. But the discussion spirals, as these things do, into heated debate. Was it black? Dark green? Did it have gold trim? Did he wear it while riding sideways on a rearing white horse? Looking majestic while explosions happen in the background? Almost definitely not. But who cares about realism when you're bored? You quietly listen, not bothering to jump in. The best part is just observing. This is the one arena where rank means nothing. A sergeant might be debating the color of the emperor's socks with a kid who can't grow a beard yet. Gossip flattens the playing field. It's the great unifier of misery. The whispers aren't always harmless, though. Some rumors come with jagged teeth, like the one about a group of deserters from another regiment caught and publicly shamed with a branding iron, or the one about food supplies being delayed again, this time because a bridge washed out somewhere up the line. You try not to listen too hard, but once the words are out there, they nest in your brain like stubborn crows. Still, you tuck your own worries into quieter corners of your mind and focus back on the paper. You sign off your letter with a flourish, despite the smudge that makes your name look like a smear of old wine. You fold it neatly and press it flat with your palm. You don't know when the next courier will come. You don't know if they'll survive the journey. But you place it in the outgoing pile anyway. It's all you can do. The guy across from you has decided that he's writing to the emperor himself, suggesting improvements to the uniform design. More pockets, he says earnestly, while drawing a sketch that looks like a walking curtain. Someone else snorts and offers, maybe one of those hats with an umbrella built in. He could call it tactical shade. The group laughs, but it's not mean-spirited. It's just the kind of humor born from too much mud and too little sleep. Somewhere behind the laughter, you hear a snatch of music, faint and scratchy. One of the soldiers owns a violin with only 3 strings left. He plays it like it's made of glass, careful and slow, the melody curling through the campfire smoke like a ghost. You all grow quiet for a moment, listening. That's the power of small things, out here. Music, paper, rumors about Napoleon's headwear. They become anchors. They remind you that you're still human, not just a number in a formation. You lie back on your pack and stare up at the canvas ceiling. It flaps gently in the breeze like a lazy heartbeat. The scent of wet wool, old onions, and ink wafts around you like a soup nobody ordered. You wonder, as your eyes grow heavy, whether the people back home actually read your letters, or if they just keep them in a drawer and take them out when they want to feel close to you. Maybe your sister reads them aloud. Maybe your neighbor uses them to wrap bread. Maybe they never arrive at all. Historians still wonder just how many soldier letters from the Napoleonic Wars were lost forever, scattered across fields and ditches and dam post stations, never making it past the first bend in the road. That thought would probably bother you more if you weren't so tired. But you are. It's a deep, bone-dragging kind of exhaustion. The kind you can't scrub off with a washcloth or sleep away in a single night. Your fingers still smell like ink. You let them fall to your side. Outside, the gossip continues. Someone is now claiming Napoleon eats only white food on campaign. Someone else suggests he doesn't sleep, but enters a trance where he communes with war gods. A third swears they saw him wink at a goose once. The stories get more ridiculous as the moon rises, which is probably for the best. Better to laugh than to listen for the distant boom of cannon fire or the soft, wet coughs of the man in the next tent over. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of voices and violin and gently flapping canvas lull you sideways. The war, the marching, the hunger, those things can wait. For now, you've got a letter written and a rumor to dream about. Maybe when you wake, someone will confirm if the hat is real. And maybe, just maybe, there'll be a reply waiting with your name on it. You're standing perfectly still, just like everyone else. Try not to blink too loud while the officers argue over a map that's definitely upside down. You don't say that out loud, obviously. You've learned the hard way. Officers don't like to be corrected, especially not by someone with mud on their boots and biscuit crumbs in their beard. So instead, you do what any good soldier does. Look incredibly focused on nothing, pretend to care deeply about the invisible task in your hands, and try not to look directly at their wigs. Yes, some of them still wear wigs. It's the early 1800s, but old habits die hard, especially for people who inherited their titles, their land, and probably their sense of fashion. These are the officers, the men of influence, and they are a curious breed. Half peacocks, half generals, with lace-trimmed coats and the ability to vanish the moment things get even slightly uncomfortable. One of them is currently adjusting his gloves, as if the fate of the campaign hinges on the perfect wrist cuff alignment. Another keeps sniffing the air like he's afraid the latrine is getting ideas above its station. From your position, you can smell the faint whiff of lavender oil and whatever extremely fancy soap his valet packed for him. You don't have a valet. You have Pierre, whose idea of cleaning up involves wiping his face with the same sock he sleeps in. You once caught a noble officer using a silver spoon to stir his tea, while everyone else was scraping soup from tin bowls using whatever wasn't nailed down. The officers live in a parallel universe, one where there's wine, gossip, and very little mud. Still, their lives aren't all satin and sashes. They've got pressure, sure. Napoleon expects them to win battles, organize troops, and definitely not cry in front of the men. But most of the time, it feels like their biggest challenge is deciding whether to set up camp by the river or the hill. Meetings stretch for hours as they debate the tactical advantages of shade. You once listened to a full-blown argument about who had the correct spelling of maneuver. Meanwhile, you and your fellow foot soldiers were trying not to freeze to death on your one good blanket. That's not to say there aren't exceptions. Some officers do their jobs. Some even leave from the front, getting muddy and miserable like the rest of you. And when they do, it's oddly inspiring, like seeing a cat do algebra. You feel something like loyalty bubble up in your stomach, though that might just be the onion stew you had last night. There's one officer in particular, a grizzled old veteran with a limp and a voice like gravel soaked in brandy, who actually remembers your name. You'd follow him anywhere, even into Russia. Probably. And then there's the officer with a mustache that has its own opinions. He rides a white horse, wears a ridiculous hat with feathers longer than your arm, and speaks only in metaphors. Once, he described the enemy flank as a wounded swan gliding through the mist of destiny. Nobody knew what that meant, but we all clapped anyway. His coat is so polished it reflects sunlight like a signal mirror. You once saw a bird fly into it. In between battles, these officers spend a surprising amount of time writing. Orders, yes, but also letters, journals, and, rumor has it, poetry. The junior lieutenant you occasionally see trimming his nails with a knife reportedly wrote a whole sonnet about his boots. You wonder if any of them are secretly chronicling the war for future generations, painting themselves as noble and brave while conveniently forgetting the part where they got lost for 2 days trying to find a hill that didn't exist. Historians still wonder if some of the reports from the front lines were, shall we say, embellished. Of course, you're not meant to think about any of this. Your job is to stand, march, shoot, and survive. The hierarchy is clear. You get yelled at by the sergeant, who gets yelled at by the captain, who gets side-eyed by the major, who tiptoes around the colonel, who sometimes gets politely glared at by Napoleon himself. The chain of command is less about leadership and more like a very dramatic game of telephone where no one hears the original message clearly, but everyone's too proud to admit it. The officers' tents are little kingdoms of their own. Velvet interiors, sturdy poles, sometimes even a rug. You caught a glimpse inside once. It was like stepping into a drawing room in Paris. Candles, maps, books, even a painting or two. You couldn't decide whether to be angry or just impressed. Your own tent, on the rare nights you get one, smells like wet socks and shared regrets. You've noticed how much the officers love ceremony. They can turn anything into a spectacle. Flag raisings, morning roll calls, even a simple inspection becomes a full event with sashes, trumpets, and posture so stiff it could crack bones. You once saw an officer rehearse his salute for 10 minutes before he even approached Napoleon. It was flawless. Napoleon didn't look up. Still, they're not immune to the grind of campaign life. The cold bites them too, and even silk-lined boots can't stop trench foot. You've seen the panic in their eyes when the cannonballs get too close. Some freeze, some flee, and some surprise you. There's always that one young officer who looks like he should be painting landscapes instead of leading men in a battle, who somehow turns out to be made of iron under pressure. Or does that? Reveals and reshapes, breaks and builds. Your favorite officer, the one who actually seems to understand that you exist, is out today leading a reconnaissance patrol. He promised he'd bring back something other than bad news. Maybe even a story about a chicken that survived the cannonball. You hope he's okay. You don't say it out loud, of course. That would be weird, but still you hope. You can hear more arguing now. Someone's pointing at the map again. Another is holding a compass upside down. The officer with the metaphors is speaking about clouds and destiny. You stopped listening. You've perfected the art of not hearing anything while looking deeply attentive. It's one of her better skills, right after dodging chores and walking silently in muddy boots. They'll come to a decision eventually, the officers. They always do. It may not be the right one, but it'll be confident and covered in wax seals. You'll find out where you're going once the yelling stops and someone remembers to tell the sergeants. Until then, you wait. You lean on your musket, adjust your gear, and try not to laugh when a horse sneezes on a major's hat. Historians still debate how effective Napoleon's officer corps truly was. Some say they were brilliant tacticians, rising through the ranks based on merit, a revolution in leadership. Others point out the chaotic mess, the infighting, the blind obedience to flawed plans. The truth, like most things, probably lives somewhere in between. For now, you live in the space between orders, between the smell of cologne and the taste of cold stew, between the sigh of a captain who's lost his map and the snore of a general who's fallen asleep mid-debate. You wait, you watch, and you wonder, how much longer until someone finally tells you to move? Battle doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It creeps. You feel it in the way the air presses heavier against your skin, the way your fellow soldiers glance around with eyes that linger a beat too long. The sky always looks more dramatic before battle. Even if it's clear, it somehow feels wrong, like it's watching you. And the first real clue? The drums. Not loud yet, but steady far off, like your heartbeat got up and walked a few paces ahead of you. You know something's coming because the officers are tense. They stand stiffer than usual, and that's saying something for men who iron their socks. Their arguments get sharper too, quieter but more frantic. Maps are unrolled and smoothed over makeshift tables, weighed down with rocks and whatever else is lying around, because even warlords have to fight the wind sometimes. You watch them stabbing at the parchment with their fingers, mumbling things like flanking maneuver and crossfire zones, while you try to remember if your musket is even cleaned. The sky's got that weird yellow-gray look it gets when everything feels like it's holding its breath. Horses are suddenly being curried and saddled with more attention than you've ever seen them get. Someone braids a tail? Yes, braids it. Like that's going to impress a cannonball. You're ordered to line up and march, but nobody tells you why. That's how it always goes. If you're lucky, someone higher up mutters something like enemy in the vicinity, and if you're really lucky, the person saying it doesn't immediately throw up afterward. The sounds start creeping in louder now. Drums that pound like a second heartbeat, hooves clacking like castanets, and underneath it all, the rustling of hundreds of men adjusting straps, whispering prayers, or humming weirdly specific childhood songs. You catch yourself doing it too. Something about a spinning top or a dog you once had. It's bizarre what the brain dredges up when it's stressed. Someone passes around a flask. It's awful. Burnt potato awful. But it warms your throat and does a little dance in your stomach. And for a moment, you're less terrified. That moment is very short. The officer on the horse finally speaks. His voice isn't as noble as you'd expect. A bit nasal. Maybe a cold. He says things like valor and honor and victory, and you nod because that's what's expected. But mostly you're staring at his boots, wondering if his feet hurt too, and whether or not he really believes what he's saying. Then the gunpowder smell hits you. Not full force, just a whisper of it carried on the wind, like someone opened a distant oven and the burnt crust floated miles across the hills. That smell gets into everything, your coat, your tongue, your soul. And it tells you the enemy is near. Drummers take their places. Children really, just a bit taller than the muskets they stand beside. They've practiced these rhythms more than you've practiced aiming. It starts with a steady roll, like rain on a tin roof. Then louder. Then synchronized with your heartbeat. Or maybe your heart is just trying to keep up. Either way, you're moving now, marching toward the thing. You don't know what the thing is yet. Could be a row of hidden rifles behind some hedges. Could be a field of cavalry with their sabers out, shining like oversized kitchen knives. Could be a cannonball with your name poorly misspelled on it. Your shoes are blistered. Your hands are sweating. And your musket, which you'd name if you weren't too tired, feels like a traitorous log in your arms. You hope it fires. You really hope it fires when it matters. And still the drums. A horse neighs nervously. Someone drops a cartridge and curses under their breath. The tension tightens like bootlaces. Then, just as you crest a small rise, you see them. Across the field, shadowy figures, moving with purpose, flags whipping in the wind. You don't need to count. Your stomach has already decided they outnumber you. You hear a man behind you whisper "mother," and someone else throws up with astonishing volume. You don't look back. The officer's bark orders now. No more poetry, no more speeches. Just action. Your regiment shifts like a sluggish caterpillar, bodies aligning, bayonets gleaming dull silver in the waning light. The first shot rings out, and it isn't yours. It never is. A whistling shriek passes overhead. Maybe a ball, maybe just air bending under pressure, and everyone flinches, including the brave ones. The officers yell again. You do as told. Muskets raise. Muskets fire. Smoke erupts like angry clouds. The battlefield becomes a place where time has no real grip. Seconds stretch into eternities, and minutes collapse into blinks. There's shouting, always shouting, but it's strange how muffled it becomes once the firing starts. You hear your own breath, loud and wet. You hear someone crying, not weeping, just a slow leaking of fear. You reload. You fire. You step forward. You trip over something and don't look down to see what it was. Your nose stings from the sulfur. Your shoulder aches from the recoil. Somewhere in the chaos, a drummer has stopped playing. You don't know if he's moved on or just stopped forever. And in the middle of it all, there's a weird stillness, like being underwater during a storm. You're there, but not entirely. You exist in pieces, an aching hand here, a racing heart there. Your mind floats somewhere near the tops of the trees you passed this morning. One musket misfires beside you with a crackling pop, that smells like disappointment. The soldier beside you swears in a language you don't recognize. He throws the weapon like it insulted his mother. Eventually, things slow. Not stop, slow. The firing fades. Smoke lifts like morning fog. Shouts become moans, and footsteps become hesitant again. Someone says, "I think we won," but nobody cheers. Not yet. You look around. It's hard to process the faces. Some are ghostly white. Some are red with exertion. All of them look older now, including yours, if you had a mirror to check. The officer on the horse rides past, still upright somehow, but his velvet is scorched and he's bleeding from somewhere near his hairline. It looks like a fashion statement. You made it through this one. Historians still wonder how Napoleon's soldiers kept going, battle after battle, year after year. Was it loyalty? Was it adrenaline? Was it just habit after a while? There's no single answer, only theories, and none of them feel as real as the sweat drying on your back right now. You sink to your knees beside a tree stump. You wipe your forehead and feel the grit of ash and mud. Someone hands you a crust of bread. You take it. You eat like it's your last meal, even though you hope it's not. And from somewhere distant, beyond this ravaged field, you hear the softest, most haunting sound of all. The drums are starting up again. The world has gone quiet. Not peaceful quiet, never that. This is the thick, eerie, stomach-hollowing stillness that settles before something breaks. You've felt it before in smaller doses, like when a drunk soldier suddenly stops laughing, or when a loaded cart slips in the mud but hasn't quite tipped over. But this is different. The fog rolls low and wide across the field in front of you, curling around boots and cannon wheels like it knows something you don't. Maybe it does. You're holding your musket tighter than usual, though it doesn't offer much comfort. Its wooden stock is slick from the morning mist, and your fingers are already stiff with cold. Your shoulders ache from marching, and your eyes sting from too little sleep. You shift your weight slightly, and the mud beneath your soles makes a gentle squelch. That tiny sound feels thunderous in the silence. No one speaking, not even Pierre, who usually manages to crack a joke about everything, even amputations. You glance at him. He's staring dead ahead, lips pressed into a thin line. He's chewing the inside of his cheek again. Bad sign. Last time he did that, a cavalry charge split our left flank, and a man got dragged screaming by his stirrup for nearly half a mile. You don't bring that up. Instead, you look forward because that's what everyone else is doing. The officers muttered something vague about enemy positions beyond the ridge, but no one really knows what's waiting in that curtain of fog. Could be a small detachment, could be a full battalion, could be nothing. Probably isn't nothing. Somewhere to your right, a drum taps 3 quick beats. Your stomach flips. That's not for show. That's communication. And that rhythm? It's the one that means ready bayonets. A few seconds pass. Then another, farther off. The message is spreading like ripples through the ranks. You hear the metallic rasp of steel being drawn all around you, like cicadas in a forest of death. Your hands shake as you fix your bayonet. It's a little loose on the barrel, but you don't dare mess with it now. The last time you tried tightening it mid-march, you sliced open your thumb and had to hide the blood on your pants to avoid getting pulled from the line and mocked by half the company. You're not making that mistake again. If it falls off in battle, you'll just stab someone with a blunt end and hope for the best. A faint rumble now, distant but growing. Could be wagons, could be cavalry, could be your imagination, hyped up on nerves and a breakfast of half-burnt biscuit and bad memories. Still, you can feel it, not just hear it. It buzzes in your chest like a low growl from beneath the earth. It's almost soothing in a way, like thunder far away. But thunder doesn't usually smell like gunpowder and singed horsehair. The officers ahead are repositioning. You watch as they adjust the line, subtle movements like chess players shifting pawns. One man on horseback rides by, muttering something about holding formation. You pretend to listen. Your eyes follow his horse instead. It's an old beast, gray and mottled, with scars like stories written across its flanks. Its tail flicks nervous. The horse knows too. The fog shifts. There a shape, then another, then many. Shadowy figures moving with purpose. You squint, try to make out their uniforms, but the mist distorts them like a dream. Or a nightmare. Some are carrying pikes. Others have rifles. One looks like he's holding a flag. You can't tell. Your breath hitches in your throat and catches there, refusing to come back out. Then a shot. One single shot cracks across the field and shatters the silence like glass. You flinch, instinctively ducking, though it came from far ahead. Still, that's all it takes. The spell is broken. All at once, the world erupts. Muskets fire in ragged bursts, the smoke mingling with the fog until it's impossible to see who's shooting or where it's coming from. The first cannon blasts shake the ground and rattle your teeth. Your ears ring instantly, and the sound echoes inside your skull like a bell struck too hard. Men are yelling, but it's all garbled nonsense now. Noise without meaning. You understand only motion. Move forward, keep line, don't trip. The push begins. You advance, musket braced, heart thudding hard enough to bruise your ribs. Your boots slosh through mud that now smells faintly of iron. Already. The fog parts in tendrils, revealing flashes of the enemy. A coat here, a hat there, a face contorted, yelling too close. You fire. You don't aim. No one is really aiming anymore. There's no time. You reload with trembling fingers, praying you don't drop the ball or forget to pack the powder. You jab the ramrod home and nearly forget to pull it back out again. You could have fired it like a dart. The lines clash. You barely see the moment it happens. 1 second, there's distance. The next, there's contact. Bayonets glint, clash, jab. Someone screams, a long, wet sound. You don't look. You just keep moving. We're trying to. Pierre is beside you. He swings his musket like a club, striking someone you hadn't even seen. The man goes down with a grunt, and Pierre yells something in your ear that's completely lost in the noise. He might have said behind you, or let's get bread later. Either way, you know like you heard him and lunge forward. You stab. The bayonet goes in surprisingly easily. Too easily. Like punching through wet cloth. The sensation is awful and soft. You don't wait to see who it was. You yank the weapon free and stumble away, gagging a little. The taste of ash and bile fills your mouth. Smoke is everywhere now. It rolls over the field, thicker than fog, hotter too. It stings your eyes and chokes your throat. The air smells like blood and sulfur and fear. You wipe your face on your sleeve and find it streaked with something dark. You hope it's mud. Nearby, an officer is yelling, trying to regroup your side. He's got a sword drawn, and he's swinging it in wide arcs like a conductor of some unhinged orchestra. You try to follow his gestures, but your body is no longer cooperating. Your limbs feel distant, like they belong to someone else. You're moving through water. No, through smoke. No, through a memory you'll never be able to explain. Someone falls near your feet. You don't know them. You don't want to. You step around them and push forward. Historians still wonder how anyone kept moving in battles like these. How the smoke, noise, and sheer terror didn't paralyze entire regiments. Some think it was discipline. Others say it was adrenaline. One theory, momentum. Once you start, you don't want to stop, because stopping feels more dangerous than anything ahead of you. Maybe they're all right. Or maybe everyone just wanted to be able to say they made it through. A cannon booms behind you, sending shockwaves through your back like a slap from a giant. You turn just enough to see a crater where 5 men used to be. They're gone now. Not fallen gone. The earth swallowed them whole. Your stomach lurches. And then, suddenly it ends. Not all at once. It peters out, like a party that went on too long. The gunfire slows, the shouts fade, and what's left is groaning, sobbing, and the low moans of the wounded. The fog settles again, this time tinged with smoke and silence. You stand there, not sure what to do. Your musket is empty. Your hands are filthy. You've lost your hat. You don't remember when. Pierre walks up, limping slightly. He looks at you, eyebrows raised, then coughs and says, "I think I swallowed a tooth. Might not be mine." You almost laugh. You don't, but you think about it. You wake up blinking at the pale canvas above you, which isn't a sky at all, but the underside of a field hospital tent, or what counts as one. The world smells like sweat, vinegar, and blood, and everything seems just slightly sideways. The breeze cuts through the open flap, carrying the soft creak of carts, the occasional whimper, and the bark complaints of men who'd rather be anywhere but here. You try to shift, but your body has apparently filed a formal protest against movement. Your arm's in a sling, though you don't remember how or when that happened. There's a weird clicking noise in your shoulder whenever you breathe too deeply. It's almost musical, kind of like maracas, which would be amusing if it didn't hurt so much. There's also a dry, tugging sensation across your temple, and your mouth feels strange. You reach up slowly. Slow is the only speed you have left, and discover you're now the proud owner of precisely 3 teeth on your right side. One of them wiggles slightly when you press. A man walks by your cot and nods without really looking at you. He's got a blood-stained apron, sleeves rolled up, and a hacksaw tucked casually under one arm like a baguette. The barber surgeon, you guess. Yes, that's the man you want working on your bone-deep injuries. His hair is matted, his eyes bloodshot, and yet somehow he still hums a little ditty while he walks. There's a myth that battlefield surgery was full of screaming and sawdust. And sure, there's some truth there. But the part they don't tell you is how disturbingly normal it all becomes. How routine. Men in various stages of woundedness groan and shuffle, and those still waiting for treatment lie in quiet purgatory. There's always a line, and it's somehow both tense and eerily patient. You look over and catch the eye of a man missing part of his ear. He shrugs, as if to say, well, this is what we signed up for. You try to remember how you got here. Maybe it was a cannon blast, or a cavalry scuffle gone wrong. Or maybe you just tripped over your own bayonet in the chaos. Honestly, it's a blur. Your memories are stitched together with adrenaline and fear. What you do remember is the thud of your own heartbeat in your ears, the choking fog of gunpowder, and the endless, whirling madness of battle. Now it's just the aftermath. And in this makeshift recovery ward, pain comes in levels. Throbbing, searing, stinging, numb. Pick your poison. A nurse, well, someone calling themselves a nurse, offers you a tin cup of water. It tastes like old pennies and rain barrel. Still, it's the best thing you've had in hours, maybe days. You sip, carefully navigating the jagged geography of a new dental landscape. The nurse nods and moves on, already halfway through dabbing someone's bandaged leg with what smells suspiciously like wine. Not the good kind. Across the tent, a young soldier cries quietly. No one looks at him, not because they don't care, but because they do. And looking would make it harder to pretend you're all going to be okay. The barber surgeon returns and squats beside you. He says your wound looks clean enough. You take that as high praise. He pokes around your shoulder with a stick, because of course that's what you do when someone's dislocated a joint, and hums again. Something cheerful, absurdly so. Maybe he used to be a musician. Or maybe this is just how you survive in a world held together with frayed rope and clumsy stitches. Then comes the real fun. With 2 assistants holding you down, the surgeon gives your shoulder a sudden jerk and pop. Your vision goes white for a moment, your mouth opens in a silent scream, and you nearly black out. When the fog clears, he's nodding like he just finished hanging a picture on the wall. Satisfied. You might hate him a little bit, but also, thank you. He mutters something about needing to keep it still and ties a strip of someone's old shirt around your arm. It's damp. You choose not to think about why. Later, you find out the shoulder wasn't the worst injury in the tent. One man lost a leg. Another lost 2 fingers and doesn't seem to know it yet. A third had his nose sewn back on, sort of. The results are avant-garde. Still, you count yourself lucky. Mostly intact, still breathing, and no longer lying in a puddle of your own confusion. Not everyone can say the same. Medicine in Napoleon's army is creative. And by creative, we mean mostly guesswork held together by grim determination and herbal teas. Leeches are still fashionable, and amputation is the gold standard for almost any wound. Gangrene? Off with the limb. Bullet graze? Better safe than sorry. Off with the limb. Stubettu. Let's talk about your options. There's no anesthesia, just a leather strap to bite down on and a buddy to hold your legs. If you're lucky, the surgeon is sober. If you're really lucky, he's recently washed his hands, though that might just be from wiping them on his trousers. Somehow people survive. Not always, not often, but sometimes. And those who do become walking patchworks of scar tissue and half-healed injuries. War has a way of stitching its memory into the skin. You overhear a whispered debate 2 cots down. Someone swears Napoleon himself once broke a rib and kept fighting, while another insists he probably just had a cold and exaggerated for effect. Historians still argue whether the emperor's legendary resilience was real or more of a morale-boosting myth. Either way, it gives you something to think about between bouts of dizziness and nausea. You drift in and out of sleep, the pain a dull companion. Dreams and reality bleed together. You imagine your shoulder glowing like a lantern, casting strange shadows on the tent walls. You dream of boots with wings, of onions dancing, of your mother laughing in a field somewhere far, far from here. Someone's snoring again. Probably the same guy who snores like a goat, drowning in porridge. You can't be mad. Everyone's broken in some way. And sleep, however fragile, is the only medicine no one can take from you. By morning, the tent is half empty. Some men have walked out, limping and braced. Others have been carted away. A few. Well, the silence speaks for them. You sit up slowly, marveling at how every muscle and bone seems to negotiate first. Your shoulder clicks. Still there. Your missing teeth whistle a little when you exhale through your mouth. Kind of charming in a tragic way. Outside, you glimpse a slice of sun. The world hasn't stopped turning just because you spent a night becoming a living jigsaw puzzle. Someone hands you a crust of bread. You gnaw at it with the left side of your mouth and think about what comes next. Probably marching. You limp through the splintered skeleton of a town that might have once been charming. The kind of place with tidy windows, a bakery, and maybe even cheerful gossip passed between neighbors on sunlit porches. Now it's just ruins, collapsed roofs, shuttered churches, and cobblestone roads smeared in soot and silence. Your boots, caked in the kind of grime that no puddle dares wash off, squish with each step. You tell yourself it's mud. You don't want to look down. Best not to test your optimism. Your stomach grumbles like a cannonball rolling across your ribs. The last thing you ate was a scrap of hard biscuit and what might have been rat jerky, though no one had the courage to confirm. Hunger has moved in permanently now, a sullen, bone-deep companion. It doesn't complain loudly anymore. Just sits there, gnawing at the walls of your gut with quiet determination. Your uniform is, well, it's still on your body, which is something. The blue has faded to a kind of tired gray blue, with buttons clinging on like war-weary comrades. There's a tear across your left sleeve where a musket ball thought about saying hello. Your coat smells like smoke and anxiety. Everything you own is either frayed, damp, or stolen. And you're not even mad about that anymore. Honestly, if someone steals your other sock, you just nod at them. Respect. You shuffle past what used to be a family's home, now missing half its roof in all of its dignity. A broken doll's head sits on the steps. You pause. Was it always looking at you? You blink. It still is. Okay, that's fine. Perfectly normal. In the distance, a bell tolls. No one knows who's ringing it. Maybe it's just stuck, swinging in the wind. Or maybe someone's still up there, pulling the rope out of habit. Soldiers don't ask questions like that anymore. Curiosity is a luxury, like soap or bread. Your regiment has dwindled to a loose collection of hobbling souls, faces hollowed by smoke and weeks of sleep stolen in 5-minute increments. Some of them try to joke. They call themselves the unkillables. It's half funny, half wishful thinking. One guy insists he's been shot 4 times and stabbed twice. No one doubts it. He limps like every joint is a negotiation and still insists on singing dirty songs at night. The officers are quieter now, too. Their maps have fewer lines on them. Their uniforms aren't as clean as they used to be. There's no more velvet, no more powdered wigs. Just frayed collars, worry lines, and the occasional shaking hand clutching a brass telescope that sees nothing useful anymore. Everyone's pretending things aren't unraveling. Everyone knows they are. You find a spot on the steps of a burnout chapel, lower yourself down carefully, and press your back against cold stone. The air smells like wet ashes and something iron-like that you've stopped noticing. Your legs throb with a slow, rhythmic ache. It's almost musical if pain had a song. A dog walks by. A real, actual dog. You can't tell if it's stray or surviving. Its ribs are visible. Its fur matted. It gives you a long look, the kind that says, "You and me, pal, we're both just trying to not die weirdly today." Then it keeps walking. You almost salute it. Honestly, it's the most civilized encounter you've had all week. At some point, someone produces a deck of cards with only 37 cards in it. That's enough. Rules don't matter now. You play a round of something that starts as poker and ends as who can pretend to win the hardest. The pot is a spoon, a single peppermint, and a button that might have once belonged to a general. Everyone bets like it's gold. You lose the peppermint. Later, a fellow soldier, a guy named Henri, who speaks mostly in grunts and sarcasm, leans over and asks, "Do you think Napoleon ever smells like this?" You both laugh. Not a good laugh. Not a hearty belly laugh. The kind of laugh that sounds like it's trying to escape your lungs. You picture the emperor lounging somewhere warm, sipping wine, wearing clean socks. Historians still debate whether he truly cared about the suffering of his men, or if he simply saw them as pieces on a board. You'd like to believe he cared. You really would. But your boots are wet, and your toes are numb, and you haven't heard a proper speech in weeks. The sky grows dark, and not just from the setting sun. The clouds pile up like bruises, heavy and swollen. There's no telling if it'll rain. It's already rained so much this month, the rivers are embarrassed. But tonight it holds off. Just cold wind, slipping past your coat and whispering something you pretend not to hear. You drift into a half-sleep and dream of soup. Just soup. A bowl. Steam rising from it. It doesn't even have to taste like anything. You just want to hold the bowl. To feel warm. A cannon fires in the far distance. Not here, somewhere else. But the sound vibrates through your ribs like a memory you'd rather forget. You don't even flinch. Just open your eyes, glance at the horizon, and mutter, "Not tonight." The sky agrees. It's too tired. Someone pulls out a mouth harp and plays a tune that might have been cheerful once. It sounds like loneliness now, but even that's something. Music reminds you that people still exist, that somewhere outside this mess, normal lives continue. People are planting gardens, arguing over soup recipes, folding laundry. You wonder if the war will ever end, if there'll be a day when you don't wake up wondering whether your own knees will betray you. No one talks about after. Not really. What would you even do? Go home? Be a tailor again? Farm? Sit in a chair and just exist? It's a funny thought. You can't even picture your own house anymore. You only remember the way it smelled, with smoke and wool. A lesser-known detail you heard just last week. Apparently, some regiments carried miniature mascots. A duck, a goat, even a monkey. You wonder what happened to them. Did they get medals? Were they better at staying warm? Around you, men snore, mutter, and shift in sleep. The fire crackles low. It's mostly smoke now, but it's warmish. You hug your coat tighter and close your eyes again. Maybe tomorrow brings orders. Or marching. Or nothing. You take nothing. Nothing sounds restful. But for now, you're still standing. Still here. And despite everything, the blisters, the ghosts in your dreams, the taste of soot in your mouth, you're not entirely broken. Not yet. You're not the same person who signed up drunk, naive, vaguely excited about the uniform. And that's putting it gently. You used to whistle as you marched, or at least mutter jokes under your breath. Now, not so much. Your lips are dry, cracked like old saddle leather. And even if you wanted to whistle, you're missing that tooth that used to help with it. You press on through the sludge of a road that was probably never much of a road to begin with. Just dirt kicked up by centuries of feet and hooves and wheels that didn't care much for direction. Now, after battles and retreat, rain and ruin, it's just muck. The kind that grabs your boots and makes rude, squelching noises like the earth itself is chewing. And your boots, oh, the boots. Remember when they were new? Shiny, stiff, something to be proud of. You even polished them once or twice, back when that seemed to matter. Now, they're barely boots at all. More like two burlap nightmares stitched together with twine and prayers. They never dried out after that river crossing 3 weeks ago. And the socks? Let's just say you've been wearing the same damp, sour pair for so long. They've practically applied for citizenship. There's no music this time. No triumphant drums or waving flags. Just the wind, sharp and quiet, whistling through broken trees and abandoned carts. The occasional distant clank of a wheel turning too slowly, or the cough of someone who won't last the week. It's funny. You used to think the march to war was the hard part. The endless drilling, the heavy packs, the mud. But this march, the one back, it doesn't have any adrenaline to keep you moving. Just stubbornness. You're running on that and the memory of warm soup, even if it came with bugs floating on top. Occasionally, you pass a small village. Not the bustling kind with markets and children laughing in the streets. These are hollowed out shells of towns, stripped bare by armies. Yours, theirs doesn't matter. The locals, if they're still there, peek through shutters or hide behind crumbling walls. You try to look harmless, maybe even smile, though with your sunken cheeks and tattered coat, you probably resemble a wandering ghoul more than a soldier. Once, a kind old woman handed you a half loaf of bread from a window and whispered something in a language you didn't understand. You nodded anyway. That bread lasted 2 whole days, which felt like a miracle. You travel mostly in silence. The others beside you, what's left of them, don't talk much either. Words feel too heavy now. What would you say? Hey, remember when Pierre took a cannonball to the knee and laughed about it? Or, do you think Napoleon even knows your name? No one wants to talk about who's gone, or how, or why. You just march, one foot, then the other, then the other. Then stop to yank your foot from the mud, then do it again. Sometimes you hum a little tune in your head, just to break the monotony, but it always fades away, drowned by the sound of dragging feet and distant crows. A few times you spot something glittering on the side of the road. A coin, maybe, or a medal dropped in haste. You don't stop for it. Not because you're not tempted, but because bending down takes effort. And anyway, medals feel a little silly now. You could probably sew 100 of them to your chest and still not feel proud. You survived, sure, but you also saw things that no shiny disc of brass can balance out. You remember the boy who cried for his mother with half his face missing. You remember the way a man could bleed out into the dirt while everyone just kept walking. You remember how cold your hands got that night you thought you might die. At one point, you get a letter. Or rather, Someone hands it to you, a crumpled, rain-splotched note from home. You recognize the handwriting immediately, even though the ink's smudged. It's from your sister. She's alive. The farm's still standing. She says they're saving a seat by the fire for you. You fold it carefully and tuck it into the deepest, driest corner of your coat, next to the crust of hard cheese you've been hoarding like treasure. You think about that fire sometimes when the nights get too long. You stop in a field one night that smells vaguely like lavender, though that might just be your brain playing tricks again. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. You curl up under your cloak, which is more whole than cloth, and try to ignore the ache in your joints and the strange twitch in your shoulder. Your dreams are strange now, full of noise and smoke and the echo of shouted commands. Sometimes you wake up mid-dream and have to remind yourself that you're not still fighting, that the cannon isn't real, that you made it through. Historians still debate just how many of you made it back. Numbers vary depending on who's counting. Some say a third of the men survived certain campaigns. Others insist it was fewer, and some think even the ones who walked home never truly came back. That something stayed behind, some sliver of their spirit, lost in a snowy forest or under a fallen banner. Maybe they're right. You feel lighter now, but not in a good way. Like parts of you have blown away in the wind. Eventually, you start to see places you recognize. A river, a row of trees, a distant steeple. It hits you slowly. This is the road that leads home. You pass the milestone where you used to meet your cousin to fish. The bend in the road where you once kissed a girl and swore you'd marry her someday. And then, there it is. Home. The farmhouse is smaller than you remember. Or maybe you're just bigger, more used to wide open nothingness. Smoke curls from the chimney. A dog barks. You hesitate for a moment, boots sinking into the familiar mud, your heart doing something strange in your chest. Then the door opens. Light spills out. Warmth. Voices. You smell stew. Real stew with meat in it and fresh bread and soap. You step forward, slow and cautious, as if you're afraid it might all vanish. Inside, someone gasps. A chair scrapes. Arms wrap around you. It's too much, too fast, too soft. You stand still for a long moment before hugging back, your eyes stinging with something you can't quite name. Relief? Regret? Just dust. You sleep in a real bed that night. The sheets are clean, and the pillow smells like lavender again, but this time it's real. You stare at the ceiling, unsure how to relax in such comfort. You spent so long sleeping in mud, in ditches beside dying men. Now there's silence. No drums, no shouting, just the creak of wood and the steady beat of your heart. And somewhere, far away, Napoleon still dreams of glory. Now, you're no longer trudging through mud. You're not in a tent that smells like wet wool and regret. You're far from the smoky echoes of cannon fire and the endless, aching march through unknown countryside. You're just here, in this moment. Safe, still, breathing, slowly, softly, in and out, like waves pulling back from shore, gentle and rhythmically. Whatever aches you carried in, real or remembered, can be set down now. Your shoulders are no longer bearing the pack. Your feet aren't blistered. Your hands aren't clutching a half-burned biscuit or scribbling words to home in the dim light of dawn. No more hunger. No more waiting. Just calm. You did it. You made it through. You walked the path of a soldier who gave too much and asked for very little. You stood in the cold, the mud, the madness, and now you're standing nowhere. Floating, drifting, light as a feathered thought. You've earned your rest. Your breathing slows as the world around you softens. Trees become outlines. Faces become mist. Memory becomes dream. The sound of drums fades, replaced by the hush of wind across a quiet field. Grass whispering in a language no one remembers. Somewhere in the far, far distance, a lantern flickers in a farmhouse window, and someone hums a lullaby no army could silence. You're warm, held by stillness, safe beneath your blankets, and deeper still under sleep's heavy, healing cloak. No more letters to write, no more boots to lace, just the hush of now and the softness of peace curling around your thoughts like fog over an old battlefield, long forgotten by time.